Channel your sexual desire and you can achieve great things. This is a rather frequent theme in self-improvement space in recent years. Every person has sexual desire, and it's, relatively speaking, a constant in men, so it's a great source of power to achieve great things for men, is it not? Well, is it really? The fact is, this is a very old concept that keeps getting dusted off every now and then and is present across many cultures of the world. Today, let us examine it as introduced by Napoleon Hill in the book Think and Grow Rich. We will see if it actually makes sense or not. Sup there, I'm Phoenix and I read self-improvement books so that you don't have to, or at least so that you know which ones are worth reading. Of course, you are more than welcome to just learn from my videos directly, or podcasts in Spotify's case. Let me say a few words about the author first. Napoleon Hill was a very influential self-improvement guru who was active in the first half of the 20th century. His book, Think and Grow Rich, was and still remains very successful, with many people praising the usefulness of this work. However, as I have said in my second video, How to Be Successful, or podcast if you are listening to this on Spotify, the author was a bit of a sketchy individual. He was certainly successful and rich, but there were multiple ups and downs in his life, and he is suspected to have run some scams, including those related to self-improvement, which, generally speaking, cast some doubt on the veracity of his otherwise very successful book. Please watch my video How to Be Successful for more details. You can find it in the corner up on the screen. Okay, so what does the author have to say about sexual desire? According to him, sexual desire is the strongest of human desires, strong enough to risk one's life and reputation. It makes people brave, tenacious, and more determined, and can also amplify their imagination and creativity. What the author suggests is that people don't repress or avoid their desires, but rather channel their power into something else in a positive and beneficial manner. His point is that since your sex drive can awaken so many positive qualities, you should use it for more wholesome purposes, especially since merely repressing your desires will make them explode eventually in some potentially negative manner. In other words, we are talking about the so-called sexual transmutation. The benefits are twofold. Firstly, you don't squander your health and energy by sex or masturbation, and secondly, you basically get some quote-unquote free energy and power to achieve your goals, whether they are related to earning money, advancing career, or whatever else. So, how does the author tell us to achieve this? First, he tells us to stimulate our minds using sexual desire. What this means is that you embrace horny, or whatever sexual desire you feel, instead of repressing it. And then, well, here's the problem. There's no then. The author is extremely reluctant to put forth any details whatsoever. It seems like he's suggesting that you should use your sexual desires as a medium to feel more determined and more creative, and then just stop thinking about the sexy stuff and instead think about some productive topics while still feeling the same. Man, I think we can be frank here. This is garbage. Now, let me tear this thing apart before I tell you what you actually can do when it comes to utilizing your sex drive? First of all, let's take a closer look or listen at what the author says to back his claims. He brings up quote-unquote scientific research and then goes on to say, quote, "The research from which these astounding discoveries were made went back through the pages of biography and history for more than 2,000 years. Wherever there was evidence available in connection with the lives of men and women of great achievement, it indicated most convincingly that they possessed highly developed sex natures." End quote. Second, the author goes on to make the two following claims. 1. The men of greatest achievement are men with highly developed sex natures, men who have learned the art of sex transmutation. And 2. The men who have accumulated great fortunes and achieved outstanding recognition in literature, art, industry, architecture, and the professions were motivated by the influence of a woman. Now, here's what I think about it. We get no examples of any person in particular and no details about what sexual transmutation is or how it can be carried out. It's not just that, for there's a confounding factor. Those men inspired by women might have been inspired by beauty or love, and not sexual desire per se. Also, this so-called research lacks substance because we don't get any examples of who and where conducted such research and by what means. For all we know, the author might have pulled it out of his ass, which I think he did. At the end, the author also gives the example of castrated animals and people being devoid of drive and motivation. While this is a much more solid point, it's still not entirely convincing. Firstly, this is because the cause may be loss of testosterone, with loss of sex drive and loss of any drive in life both being results, so it's just an association. Secondly, this is because there are many historical examples, especially in Chinese dynasties or Ottoman Turkey, of eunuchs who were money and power hungry, including those who started from zero before they were castrated. I am ready to provide examples of such individuals. It is my belief that the author only heard about this practice and incorporated it in his book because it sounded impressive. I suspect he himself had no clue how to use it and didn't do it. Speaking of which, I've seen quite a few RP gurus, RP stands for red pill here, who bring up sexual transmutation in similar forms. Frankly speaking, I think they say this to dupe their audience, which usually consists of single and often thirsty men, into stopping their pursuit of women. Why? Because lots of these gurus have no clue how to get a decent woman, and they don't want to give specific advice, get cut, and lose viewers, which, let me remind you, include potential customers for whatever shit those gurus are selling. Even if they do know how to deal with women, they may still withhold real good advice for the same reason, to keep you a loser and therefore a customer. Now, let's talk about what I think about sexual transmutation. Overall, I don't believe that you can directly transform your lust or some sort of sexual energy that you would supposedly otherwise expend during sex, for example, Jing in traditional Chinese medicine. I think it's bullshit. However, with that being said, I think that the mental or hormonal stimulation that sex drive can provide is real. After all, the instinct to perpetuate one's species is among the most basic instincts of all animals, and we humans are no exception. There has been lots of gibberish in this video so far due to Napoleon Hill's nonsense from his book, so let me now introduce an actual specific method to use your sex drive to accomplish things unrelated to sex. In fact, this is a very simple method. What you want to do is to use a carrot and stick approach, i.e., a reward or punishment method. It's as simple as it gets. If you make progress in your goal, reward yourself with sexual activity. If you screw things up or are lazy and idle, punish yourself with lack of sex activity. As for what the exact activity is, suit yourself. Just remember to adjust intensity of reward and punishment to the difficulty of your plans. There are certain risks to this though. 1. It's easy to do too much or too little. I don't recommend being overzealous to the point where your desires are constantly repressed due to your punishments, nor should you constantly indulge in easy rewards. 2. This method affects not just you, but also your romantic or sex partners. You must exercise extreme care if you have a fixed partner. This is because punishing yourself may mean punishing your partner, which in turn may destroy your relationship, whether you are a man or a woman. This would be beyond selfish, and I cannot recommend or condone that. And 3. This method also opens a new possibility for your partner to manipulate you. Be careful regarding sharing this with your partner. While it may be helpful, your partner may be tempted to take advantage of this opportunity and manipulate and control you with sex. Most women are already doing it or trying to do so, so if you are a man and they are doing it to you, it's probably your fault for allowing this to happen. On a side note, recently there's been a trend called NoFap, where guys, I suppose it can apply to women just as well, refrain from masturbating to remain sharp and energetic and to spend the same time more constructively. I think it's good for those who are excessively masturbating or otherwise indulging in sexual activities. However, my honest opinion is that this is otherwise retarded. I believe it's better to find some relief every now and then instead of going crazy. While you can use the energy and motivation from your sex drive to do other things, as in carry out sexual transmutation, this doesn't make your desire and needs magically disappear. To be honest, it reeks of a social experiment to me. Especially that No Nut November thing, which looked to me as if someone wanted to check if thousands of idiots will stop doing something important just because it's a meme. Next time these guys will eat the bugs and be happy. Okay, so let's talk about the strengths of using such sexual transmutation in general. 1. It's a potential source of a lot of strength, or at least a method to preserve strength and energy. 2. When it's used right, it can give you a lot of motivation. 3. It can help curb unhealthy indulgence in sex and other such. And 4. This is easier than learning how to attract and deal with the opposite sex, lol. Sarcasm alert. And now it's time for the more plentiful weaknesses. 1. It is useless if your libido is low or unstable. 2. It only borrows the strength of your libido and doesn't solve your sexual needs. 3. Many people talk about it, but they don't say how to actually do this properly, and it's often a scam or part of one, so if you see someone who espouses it, don't trust everything they say. 4. If you use the reward and punishment technique, it is easy to overdo it to both lack and excess. 5. Again, on reward and punishment technique, it may be impossible to get your reward if you don't have a willing partner, in which case the technique backfires and you won't quote unquote fall for it again in the future, or at least not as easily. 6. It has a great potential to disrupt or destabilize your current relationship. 7. It opens a new door for your partner to manipulate you, especially if you are a man or if you are the woman of a male narcissist. And the last one. As female desire tends to be less constant, women may find it a lot harder to use this concept, be it consequently or at all. Okay, let's summarize it. Sexual transmutation is a useless fad based on various esoteric practices that may or may not work entirely. Its value is largely overblown, and most of its proponents can't really tell you how to use it well, and may well be using it against you, for example to scam you. It has some merit, but only if you couple it with other methods such as punishment and reward technique. Sexual transmutation is also riddled with weaknesses. It can affect you or your partner negatively. In the first place, it requires another person's cooperation, unless you just want to pleasure yourself, which makes it highly unreliable, if not outright useless to some people. Alright, I never mentioned my experience with this. I did try it in conjunction with the reward and punishment technique in the past. It did work at first, but when I went to claim my quote-unquote rewards, things got very complicated. I of course wouldn't jerk off. What kind of reward is that? So I tried to sleep with some chicks on very casual terms, which I normally don't ever do. The first one was a few years older, and soon after we started I realized her mouth smelled really bad. Not an enjoyable experience at all. The second one was the same age and had a decent body, but the key and the luck, if you know what I mean, were a mismatch. And there was no great fun that day at all, not to mention whatever I specifically wanted to do with her at the time. The third chick stood me up and ignored my calls, and I just happened to see her from afar. She was in a fenced settlement, so I couldn't get in. I didn't know what games she was playing, but I did the only reasonable thing in such a situation. I just blocked her and went home. All of this happened in roughly 2 weeks, 3 times in a row. I was quite a bit fatter back then, so I didn't have delusions about getting any better partners, or more of them ASAP. And this really shook my belief that I could get the rewards when I and how I wanted. And since I couldn't trust the rewards, the method stopped working entirely. As such, I don't really recommend doing any garbage nofap or sexual transmutation. What I do recommend is that you prioritize hard work and proper matters over sexual fulfillment in the short term, and use your sexual desire to motivate you to get the work done faster. In particular, if you are someone who masturbates multiple times a day, get a grip and stop. Get your work done first and then rest and indulge yourself in the evening. To me, having self control and possibly using the thoughts of later pleasure are much more worthwhile than this whole transmutation rubbish. I hope you enjoyed and perhaps learned from my review. Thank you for watching. I will continue to review self improvement concepts and methods, so if you are interested in seeing more in the future, then please be a good boy or girl and like and subscribe. I also invite anyone who has had experience with sexual transmutation to share their impressions in the comments. Maybe you can actually provide some specific methods on how to use it, unlike a certain Napoleon Hill.